is away this Sunday, and he's invited me to fill the pulpit with him being gone. I love Pastor Steve. He was my best man when Denise and I got married. And he's a great pastor. And I'm glad that when I retired from pastoring, I'm glad I was able to come here and be part of this great church and sit under him. I'm going to open with three verses of Scripture, Hebrews chapter 12, 1 through 3. And then we're going to show a video. It takes about 5.5 minutes. And hope you receive something from the Lord today. If you have a need, I hope God meets it, because he is well able to do it. He's well capable. He has the supply. He has enough and then some. That's the God we serve. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endures such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart.
This old man saved my life and that of hundreds of others in the Second World War.
I have a motto that if something isn't blatantly impossible, there must be a way of doing it. I saw those people who were in difficulty, in danger, people on Hitler's back list.
It all happened so suddenly. My mother took us 4 children. We just ran for our lives.
We tried to get to America. We tried to get to England. We tried to get to Palestine. But all the governments said, our borders are now closed.
And there was no way out.
We had organized 8 transports from Prague. There were thousands of children on the lists who wanted to get out.
Then the day came that we had to leave. We went to the train. Everybody was there already, my grandparents and all our friends.
The last thing my dad said to me was, I should be his brave, cheerful little girl.
The year was 1941. On the other side of the world, Europe was in the clutches of an evil dictator, the ruthless commander of the German Nazi Party. Adolf Hitler's personal mission was to eliminate the Jewish population from Germany and establish a new order of the human race. The regime was responsible for the genocide of over 10 million Jews, whom the Nazis declared as racially inferior. As the extermination began, terrified parents began to search for ways to save their children from the gates of this horrible place known to us as Auschwitz. The freezing temperatures of winter and massive starvation took its toll on the prisoners, with millions perishing long before their execution. The world watched with disbelief as these children, these innocent children, awaited their sentence of death. One man in nearby London could not bear the thought of simply doing nothing. This is the story of a 29-year-old stockbroker, determined to do all he could to rescue the children made in the very image of God before it was too late. His name was Nicholas Winton.
In 1988, the BBC learned about Winton's story and invited him to be part of a program. He had no idea that the people sitting around him were people he had saved.
All the letters. But back here is the list of all the children. This is Vera Diamant. We did find her name on his list. Vera Gissing is with us here tonight. Hello, Vera. And I should tell you that you are actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton.
And it was just so wonderful, so terribly, terribly touching.
I wore this around my neck, and this is the actual path that we were given to come to England, and I'm another of the children that you saved.
He had no idea that the people sitting around him were people he had saved.
Can I ask, is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please? Mr. Winton, would you like to turn round?
I suppose it was the most emotional moment of my life, suddenly being confronted with all these children.
Sir Nicholas Winton. In 2003, Winton was knighted and became Sir Nicholas Winton. In the Czech Republic, he's become a national hero. In 1939, Nicholas Winton used a 2-week vacation to go to Prague and ended up saving the lives of 669 children. In the decades since, of course, the children had children who then had children, and so on. And the numbers multiplied. I want to summarize it in one sentence. A guy takes a 2-week vacation
And ends up with 15,000 children. Yes. Yes.
That is a fascinating story. He was supposed to go on a ski trip with another young guy, and he had called him, and the man said he wasn't going on a ski trip. He had heard about what was going on with the Czech refugees in Poland, and he was going to go check on them. And he said, well, he would go with him. And ended up saving 669 children's lives. Very few people knew that he was ever involved. But what happened is 50 years after the event, his wife was up in the attic and found a scrapbook with all the details and the names of the lady was showing there with the names of the children that he had saved. And she took the story around, and the BBC picked it up and told it. One thing, if you don't get anything out of the message today, I hope you got it out of that. And that is, you do make a difference. Things that you've done that other people know nothing about and you've forgotten, one day it'll come back. There's a reward day coming. We're all going to have a day of reward. There's a payday. A lot of times people think when you talk about a payday coming, they think in terms of, you're going to get caught. No, God pays us back for what we do. But I want to encourage you to find out what the payment is before you get involved on a job. My cousin and I got picked up by a farmer one time to go work, and he wanted to plant tobacco in new ground. Well, I was, new ground, I don't know if you don't know what that means if you're not grow up on a farm, but I know what it means now. It means they cut down trees, and my cousin got behind a mule with a plow and plowed, and I got behind him with an axe and cut the roots out. So we worked all day long, and the farmer, I think, paid us $6 a piece for the whole day. And so it pays to know what your reward's going to be before you start, right? Let me encourage you today. Don't give up. I was sitting over here right before I came up here, and I grabbed my ink pen and wrote this down because this was going on inside of me. I don't know where you're at today. I don't know what you're going through, but I know sometimes we go through difficult places. And I just want to tell you, don't give up on your marriage. Don't give up on your job. Don't give up on your family. Don't give up on the church. Don't give up on God. There's a payday coming. This man could have went and skied for 2 weeks. One of the sad things, and he doesn't talk about it in this clip, is on September the 1st, 1939, he had 250 children loaded on a train getting ready to leave Poland. They would take them from Poland through Germany to Holland, and from Holland they would take some kind of a transport over to England. September 1, 1939 is the beginning of World War II, and that train load of 250 children did not leave that station. And the parents of those children that did get rescued ended up in the gas chambers, and most of them died. You can make a difference. Don't give up. I don't care if somebody's criticized you. All of us deal with criticism, right? If you don't get criticized, it's because you're not doing anything, right? A lot of us don't do things because we're afraid somebody's going to criticize. But you have been called of God. You're equipped by God to do whatever it is that God wants you to do. Don't let criticism hinder you. Now, while I was serving in the prison in Okeechobee, one of the things I did is every so often, about every 2 weeks, I would send out a institutional-wide email. I would have some kind of a little story, some kind of little truth, some kind of something to try to encourage people. Here in December, they moved me to the prison in Avon Park. So I asked the warden, can I do this here? He said, yes, I'm thrilled that you want to. So I sent out an email, and it would seem to be well received, and sent out another one, 3 or 4. And, this week I sent out one on leaving the city of regret. That's a very good story. It's got a good message. And I got an email from one of the employees about one of my emails that I sent on January the 7th. I don't know why it took that long to criticize me, but apparently she held it in long enough and had to. And this little email was about respect. And at the bottom of the email, the end of the email, I have a picture of Marilyn Monroe and a quote from Marilyn Monroe talking about if you don't have respect, you really don't have anything. So the lady wrote me her criticism, and she said, Marilyn Monroe's real name is Norma Jean. Okay, I knew that. She wasn't anything more than a high-priced call girl. Can you find something better in the future, as an example? So I wrote her back and said, the email wasn't about Norma Jean. It was about R-E-S-P-E-C-T. I didn't know if she liked Aretha Franklin or not, but those of you that are my age understand what that means. I said it was about respect. And then the next sentence I put, I hope in the future something I say will be a little more encouraging to you. Now here's what happens to us if we're not careful. We allow a criticism. You think that criticism is going to keep me 2 weeks from, or a week and a half from now when I send out I'm going to send another email. I'm not going to quit because somebody criticized me. Amen? What we forget is the praise that we get from people. And when people come along and say, I've had people say, Mr. McCracken, it's every week, every couple of weeks when you send that email, it's where I'm at. I don't know how you managed to do that. Well, it's because we're all human, and whatever encourages one person pretty much encourages other people. But don't be defeated by people's criticism. When I went to Avon Park, I sent out a little email to all the people that worked for me. And I said to those that work under me, usually when you get a new boss, people are scared to death they're going to make changes. Let me assure you, I will make changes, so you don't need to worry. That's what goes with having a new boss. You can't allow criticism. One of the things you'll learn when you do things and you make things right like they ought to be, you may get criticized for a while. People will come back later and say, I thought that was a bad idea, but I really appreciate that you made that decision. You made that choice. If you're going to be a leader, you got to be able to handle criticism. Pastor in churches, you get criticized. Oh, it's a joy unspeakable and full of glory sometimes. I've had people call and tell me what I ought to preach. Well, let's move on. Let's don't go there. The Bible says, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Be weary there means to be exhausted. You can get exhausted serving the Lord. Don't give up serving on the Lord. There's a reward coming one day. That gentleman, he had no idea all those people there were part of those 669 children that he had saved. There's a reward day coming. Someday, when you stand before God, there's going to be somebody who's going to probably stand up and say, that person right there. When I was a child, they were my Sunday school teacher. When I was discouraged, they called me on the phone and encouraged me. When I felt like giving up, the pastor preached that message that encouraged me to get up and go on. Here about a year and a half ago, the governor decided that he was going to honor people that are veterans that live here in the state of Florida. And he picked about 7 sites around the state, and he went and met with any of the veterans that wanted to come. And he gave out this little award, this little medallion. It says the Governor's Veterans Service Award. It's just a little, on the one side is the seal of the state of Florida. And I went from Okeechobee over to Avon Park to that particular place where he met that day. Had all kinds of distinguished people with him. He spoke maybe 30 minutes. And he had the veterans, and the place was packed, and they were outside. I mean, it was running over. And he was giving this. Each person that came up there, he put it on their neck, and they took a picture. You could stand there with the governor, and they'd take your picture with him. And there were men that were crying, Vietnam veterans, who said this is the first time in their life that anybody's ever honored them for the service they gave to their country. Isn't that a shame? And yet those same guys are probably some of the most patriotic people in the United States. If you're a Vietnam veteran today, I honor you and thank you for your service. I want to tell you there's a payday. There's a day of honoring that's going to come for each one of us. And can I make a difference? Can you make a difference? Everyone in this place can make a difference in somebody's life. I guarantee you. There was a young shepherd boy. His name was David. David's 3 older brothers had been called to the army. The Philistine army had come against Israel. They were encamped on a hill. The armies of Israel camped on another hill across from them. And the armies of the Philistines had a giant. His name was Goliath. And I said earlier today, I wish he'd been on the Kentucky Wildcats basketball team because he was 9 feet tall. And but he was a giant. He would come out and defy the armies of Israel, and he would say, "You send out one of your men, and I'll stand in our stead, and you send somebody out to fight me, and whoever wins, that army will win." Well, whenever he would come out and defy the armies of Israel, Israel would be all dressed in battle, but he'd come out and talk, they'd all turn around and run. And David happened to come down to take some food to his brothers, and he heard a rumor that whoever would fight the giant would get wealth, they would get a wife, the king's daughter, and their family would be exempt from taxes. And I've tried to figure out which of those three is the best. Right now, I'd like to have the wife, but which of those three would be the best? Doesn't matter. That's what he heard. So he went to some other place in the camp and asked, "What will happen for the man that does this?" And they told him the same thing. His brother heard him talking. His brother chewed him out, got all over him, and said, "You only come down here to see the battle." And I had a question, what battle? There was no battle. They ran every day. So David, after that, he went to a third person. Trust but verify. He goes to a third person, finds out that's what the king will do. The king heard about this little shepherd boy, and he had him come to his tent, and he talked to him. And David convinced the king that as a shepherd, he knew how to take care of sheep. He knew how to battle the enemy. He knew how to stand up. Do you know how to stand up to wrong? Let me explain something. When you stand up to things that are wrong, you better expect a battle because there's going to be a battle. And you may get stabbed, you may get stuck, you may get beat up on, but thank God there are people that'll stand up for what's right. Amen? No matter what the cost. David convinced him. The king put his armor on David, and David said, I've never tried this out. I don't know how to use it, but I do know how to use the equipment that I used as a shepherd. And so David goes out to meet. The giant comes down. David runs to meet him. I want to say something, but I think it'll get me in trouble. I know it'll get me in trouble. David runs to meet him. And the giant's defying the armies of Israel, and he tells David what he's going to do with him, and David has a response. When this day's over, you're going to be defeated, and your head's going to be lopped off. Because God is with me in the armies of Israel. And you know the story, how David brings him down, and he falls to the ground. David goes up and takes the sword of the giant and cuts his head off. And when he lifts that head up, the armies of Israel charge on the armies of the Philistines, who now run, and they defeat those armies. In Revelations 22:12, it says, "Behold, I'm coming soon, and my reward is with me. I will give to every one to what he has done, according to what he has done." What do you want your reward to be? You ever thought about it? You're going to have a payday, because the word reward means to be paid for labor that you've done. What do you want your reward to be? How much are you worth an hour? I hope it's more than the $6 for the whole day that I got paid. And the truth is, that's probably about all I was worth. But what do you want to receive as a reward? I'd rather receive what that gentleman received. I'd rather there was somebody who could stand up in heaven and say, I'm here because he was willing. You ever thought about it? There's going to be people that are there because you were willing. You either encouraged them, you sent money to the mission field, you were involved in something at church, you prayed over a church service, you got involved in the altar. How many of you ever been in the altar and somebody comes up and puts their hand on your shoulder and they just begin to weep and cry for you? Sometimes they're people you don't even know who they are. Well, there's a reward day coming. You may think nobody's seen what you've done, nobody cares. He's got a scrapbook up there, he's keeping notes. He knows everything about us. The Bible said, rejoice and be glad because great is your reward in heaven. Matthew 6:6 says, but when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. The Greek word for reward there means he'll pay off the debt owed. When I first moved to Davenport to pastor, I transferred with the Department of Corrections to the prison here in Polk, CI. I took the place of a man that had a motto, and it may explain why I replaced him. His motto was, never go to the bathroom on your time and never sweat on their time. Some of you didn't get it. Never go to the bathroom on your time. In other words, don't go at 12, between 12 and 1. Go at 5 minutes till 12 when you're getting paid. Go to the bathroom on your time and never sweat on their time. And as I said, there may be a reason why I replaced him. There's a reward that the Lord's going to give us. Romans chapter 4, verse 4 and 5 says, now when a man works, his wages are credited to him as a gift. Or not as a gift, but as an obligation. If you work, there's nobody giving you a bonus. How many of you felt like your paycheck was a bonus? I've never felt like that. It's something I earned. Do you remember your first paycheck? Anybody remember? Do you remember what the stub? Do you remember reading the stub on the pay? I'd done figured out 40 hours times $1.60. That was $64. When they handed me that paycheck, I think it was like $48. Somebody stole my money. Was somebody called FICA, and I still have that person stealing my money. That's my paycheck. And that FICA is not a gift. Anyway, in that verse of Scripture, what the Lord's trying to say is, or what the Apostle Paul's writing, he's trying to say salvation is not earned. It's not part of the paycheck. It is a gift. It's a bonus. Matter of fact, all the work you do without salvation is nice, it's good, but it won't get you into heaven. The only way you and I can go to heaven is through the grace of God. We're saved through faith. We're saved by grace through faith. 1 Corinthians 3:8 says, the man who plants and the man who waters have one purpose, and each will be rewarded according to his own labor. The word labor here means intense labor and toil and trouble. Serving the Lord can bring you trouble and toil and heartache. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Anybody been working? Hard work. You know it when you get through in the afternoon. Amen? It's really, I know, because when I get through signing my name 50 times during the day, I know I'm wore out. But serving the Lord comes with toil, and it comes with trouble, and it comes with problems. But it comes with a promise you're going to be rewarded. How many of you have ever given up on something because no one ever thanked you for doing it? I dare say just about everybody here. If you're a mother, you should have been able to say amen. How many things you've done that we're thankful? Listen, I'm glad I'm a man. That's all I'll just say that. About 2 weeks ago, I washed a load of clothes, threw them in the dryer, and this weekend I thought it's about time to get them out of the dryer. So I open the dryer door, I reach in, everything in there is just in a wad. It's just hard. And I realized just throwing clothes in the dryer is not enough. You have to hit the start button. So they've been in there for 2 weeks. So when I said, which of the 3 rewards, wealth, wife, or no taxes, you can understand. Hebrews 10:35 says, do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. Confidence, fearlessness, boldness, to have an assurance. When I went to work for the Department of Corrections in Tallahassee, I'd been working for a while, and I went to my boss one day and I said, the guy that works for me, I don't need him. I can do this job all by myself. And we can move him to do something else. He can work for somebody else in here. So he said, okay, well, we'll give it a try. Well, I did that for a while. And finally, I went to him one day. I said, his name was Rusty. I said, Rusty, I need a pay raise. I said, Rusty, it's my job to ask for a pay raise. It's your job to get it for me. So I noticed that Rusty, all day, he went back and forth with his boss, back and forth, back and forth. I knew something was working, and nothing was said. A couple of months went by, and he called me into his office. He said, Roger, I got good news for you and bad news. He said, you asked for 10%, but you're only going to get 5%. And I'm like, are you crazy? I asked for twice what I wanted because I knew the Department of Corrections, if you got one, they'd cut it in half. And they rarely give you a pay raise that way. But they did give it to me. And then a few years later, when I was working down here, the secretary of the Department of Corrections promised this group that I worked in that we were going to get a pay raise, substantial pay raise, and we were going to take on more work and responsibility. Well, we got the more work and the more responsibility. But something happened on the way to the pay raise. It never came. So I went in my office one day. I typed up a letter to the regional director down in Fort Lauderdale, and I typed it up, and I put in all the reasons why I should get a pay raise and why the secretary ought to honor his word and yada, yada, yada. But I didn't send it. I didn't feel like it was time. With God, there's a timing, and you got to learn that. You might say the right word, but at the wrong time. You got to say the right word at the right time. I let it sit there for months. I'm driving into work one day, and the Lord said, today's the day. Today's the day. I go in, I pop that letter up, I go through it, I make sure there's no emotional nonsense in there. Woe is me, you didn't give me what you promised. None of that stuff was in there. I sent that letter off to the regional director. Didn't hear anything. About 2 months later, I get an email. It says, Roger, you want to meet on this pay raise issue? I said, yeah, and we worked out where I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be at the prison in Charlotte County at 10 o'clock to meet with her. At 9 o'clock, I'm in Arcadia, and I get a call. Roger, where are you at? I said, I'm in Arcadia. I just stopped to get breakfast. Well, Miss Villacorta's here. She wants to know where you're at. You're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. I said, no, it's 10 o'clock. He said, she's here, and you're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. And I'm thinking, I've asked for a pay raise, and I can't even get to the meeting on time. So as soon as I get to Charlotte, I run, get on the computer, and sure enough, it says 10 o'clock. So she comes down the hallway, and she says, where you want to meet? And I said, in this room here, it'll be fine. And we go in the room, we sit down. She opens up her briefcase, she slides a piece of paper across to me. She says, read this, and if you agree with it, sign it. So I was having trouble reading it because I was looking at the numbers. I was looking at the amount. And didn't realize I was signing something that says if I lose my job, they have to put me on another job, my pay will never drop lower than the pay I was making on that day. And I signed that, and there was like, I don't know, $12,000, $13,000 a year pay raise. That's one you can feel. You know you get that pay raise. Now, why are you telling that? I'm not telling that. It's not a boast. I'm trying to tell you, you got to have confidence. You got to have confidence in God, and God will reward you for having confidence in Him. Those who come to God must believe that He is, and that He is what? A rewarder of them that what? Diligently seek Him. God's a rewarder. Don't give up. Don't give up on your home. Don't give up on your marriage. Don't give up on your family. Don't give up. God's a rewarder. Hebrews 11:26, it says, He, speaking of Moses, regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. It says, Moses regarded disgrace of greater value. The word respect means to turn the eyes away from other things, or to regard, and fix your eyes on something else. The scripture I opened the service with, or my message with, was fix your eyes on Jesus. I want to close with this. I don't know what the reward is going to look like, Tyler. I'm not sure. I don't know what the pay is, but I do know the neighborhood I'm going to live in is exclusive. I work in an exclusive gated community. I guarantee you, there is no job like working in corrections. It's an exclusive neighborhood. It's a city that God's preparing that's 1,500 miles cubed. The foundations of that city are made of precious stones. The street is of pure gold, so pure it's transparent. The gates are of pearl, the walls are of jasper. There's a river that runs through it called the river of life. There's a tree there, the tree of life, and the leaves on that tree are going to be for the healing of the nations. There is a reward day coming. There's a payday coming. Don't give up. 2 John 1:8 says this. Watch out that you do not lose what you have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully. Have discernment. Make sure you don't give up. Don't let somebody discourage you. Don't let somebody cause you to throw in a towel. Every pastor probably, I can't speak for all of them, I can tell you what this one did. Every Monday, I quit. Sometimes I quit after church on Sunday morning. But then there's a reward. There's 4 little children that are looking at you. You think you can give up? You give up, and what have you said to them? That God's not worth the struggle? God's worth every bit of the struggle. There's a reward coming. I don't know how much reward I'm going to get, but whatever I get, I hope there's somebody who can stand up and say that man made a difference in my life. I went to a retirement dinner Friday. There's about 200 people, a lot of dignitaries, what we would call bigwigs that were there. And I've never been to anything like this. Instead of asking people if they'd like to come up and speak, they passed the mic around. There's 200 people. And everybody's saying something. The first 5 people covered it all. They talked about the man's integrity, his passion, his compassion for people, his willingness to help you no matter what day, time, hour of the day. What do you think it would be like if instead of we were looking at Nicholas Winton, that was Jesus sitting in that seat? What would the testimonies be about him? Because every one of us is saved by his grace and his mercy. If you would, let's stand. You lead us in something good there, brother? While you're getting ready, let me just say a prayer over you, and then we'll have a moment to sing and worship the Lord. Father, if there's anyone in here who's ready to give up, throw in the towel, walk out on their home, walk out on their companion, God, speak to them. Encourage them to stick it out, to stay there a little longer, and let God work this thing out, Lord. I pray if there's somebody here who's been wounded or hurt and has really given up on doing anything at church, they'll be stirred today to go, you know what? I can't let somebody keep me from earning the reward. I want to receive what God's got for me. I want to make a difference. I want somebody to make it to heaven because I was faithful. May your grace and glory be on us today. Amen. Lead us, brother.